Paul Morgan, you're most welcome, and you're the Director of Children's Services within our social worker structure. Hugely important role that you occupy and that your team perform.
Thank you.
You were there at the very heart of the community, really, because the issues are very substantial.
Well, I think social work as a profession works with a wide range of people. People that are having difficulties in relationships, marriage breakup, people who have mental health problems, people who can have a disability, and people who are just struggling in terms of the current austerity and the economic situation.
It's funny, the four things you mentioned there, they're all intimately link-upable.
Yes.
One can lead to the other. There can be any number of them all there together in the one package.
Yes, and it's never a straightforward thing where you engage with a family and there's just one issue. There are usually multiple layers of issues, and I think some of the key skills of the social worker is to be able to work with the family and get alongside the family. And I think it's often bandied about a bit, but I think relationships are critical in that, where you build trust, and that person feels that they can open up to you about the issues that are in their life.
Yeah. It seems to me that the work your people do and that you have governance over is, it's more than a job, it's a calling, because you have your professional qualifications, but there is the almost concomitant qualification of courage. You need to be strong in what you do. You need to be convinced of what you're at, because to make that initial contact, if you like, with the family, that can be very difficult. You could be seen as an alien presence.
Well, absolutely, and I think there's many a case that we intervene in where we're not that welcome, but I think you have to overcome those barriers. And I think one of the strengths of social work as a profession, is a very strong value base in terms of respecting people.
Yeah.
And I think being open with people about what those difficulties might be.
You see, people may feel there is something of a stigma in getting involved with the social services, with a social worker, of trying to resolve things by having a social worker in their home. No call for stigma at all. You're there to be in partnership for progress.
Absolutely, we're there. We're not in there to judge families. We're in there to work alongside them, to empathise with them, and I think appreciate the difficulties they're going through, and I think really try and get alongside them, and as I say, build that relationship and let them know that we're there to help them sort that out.
And you know, the areas that you cover as your team, and the people from whom the winner of the Regional Social Work Award will come, are there sort of half a dozen or a few well-defined disciplines where we will find your people working?
I think you'll find them working over a wide spectrum. Whilst I'm the Director for Children's Services, I have Executive Director responsibility for social work and the other professions. So they work with older people, they work with vulnerable adults in the older people's programme. They work with adults and children who might have mental health problems. They work with people who have sensory, physical disabilities. And they work with children, adolescents and their parents. We work with carers. We work in the whole area of fostering and adoption.
My goodness.
So it's quite a wide spectrum. I think it covers all generations and all types of issues.
It's true to say that you're in your position, you're top of the tree almost in this area. You've done it all your life from a very early time after graduating. Are the challenges you see around you now very different to those you faced earlier on in the career?
I think society's expectations of a whole lot of things, maybe including social workers are much higher. I think the pressures on families are much greater. And I think we see it now in terms of the current economic climate. Huge amounts of poverty. And I think it's a bigger challenge for social work now. And I think there are much stronger, what they refer to as governance arrangements, but in terms of very high standards, making sure that we're managing risk appropriately and dealing with issues like that.
It seems an odd enough formula, an odd enough kind of approach that the expectation of you is growing month on month, year by year, constantly greater governance, greater expectation. Very often the budget doesn't go up to match it. You know, is there a tightness there across the area?
I think there's a challenge in terms of the budgetary constraints, but sometimes with the challenge, I personally believe comes opportunities. That you look at the way you do things, and can we do things in a different way and do them better, that we maybe connect in a different way with communities and with families. And I think we're trying to explore those in social work, because there was a social work strategy launched in 2012 by Minister Poots.
Yes.
And that was very much about getting the profession, helping the profession to move on for the new demands that you're talking about, and making sure that our staff are well competent and prepared for those challenges and can adapt to meet them.
Could the future, the roadway into the future, take you through a more collaborative kind of work, a sort of modus vivendi? Could it require you to be closer to the community, with social groups within the community, church groups, community groups, so that if not directly involved in social work, they're your in-house partners almost, close to where the problems live?
Yeah. And I think we have strong evidence of doing that already.
Really?
Yeah, we work very closely with the local communities. We have a number of, they're called service level agreements, but we work with a wide range of groups who work in partnership with us and with families to try and help those families deal with whatever difficulties they're facing. So I think you're right, that community connection is critical. And I think social work recognised that a long time ago, because it's a bit of a cornerstone of social work in terms of our community development part of our profession. And I think people are starting to connect back into that much stronger. And certainly our trust through our chief executive has been driving that in terms of the work with the local communities.
Paul, have you any handle at all on the extent to which people are gravitating towards your work for university studies? Have you enough people coming through the system to meet the demands?
From my perspective, I would think so, yes, because I think we take something like about 89 students over the year through our own Southern Trust. We have a very close partnership working with the universities, because it is important that we are giving feedback from the grassroots so that they are taking that forward in the university curriculum and preparing our social workers for coming out.
That's interesting, because you're not simply willing to go along with the status quo. You're expecting the educators of the land to come up with, in collaboration with you, the next chapter, and making sure that the people who are being taught to go to the coal face are au fait with what the next chapter and the next state of the art will be.
Yeah, and I think that's one element. I think what equally important, and it is very much the bedrock of social work, is supervision for our students when they're out. Whenever they qualify, they go through what's called the assessed year in employment, with a very close supervision, usually by a team leader, and that is to help that individual take the skills that they've learned, but also to start to apply those to real cases. And that takes time. And supervision is an ongoing, regular provision within social work, and it's very, very important.
Paul, what kind of human being makes a good social worker? What are you looking for?
Good question. Don't know what. I think we're looking for someone, I think, who has a basic desire to help others and to try and make a difference. People who do have a strong value base and, in terms of building trusting relationships, being able to advocate on behalf of individuals. Sometimes that's not easy, because you can have conflicts of interest, maybe between one party and another.
Yeah.
But you're trying to advocate at all times in the best interest of that family and that child.
Is it your experience that the Churchillian quotation, jaw, jaw, better than war, war, within the family domestic scene is the way forward, and does it work?
Certainly, we would work very closely with families because I think we would have come up with a lot of situations where there's a lot of strain in relationships in the families, and it takes a lot of qualities to be able to allow people to open up and to share their most inner feelings about something that's not going right in their life. And it takes a certain set of skills and ability to be able to do that. But then the next challenge is to help those people move on, to rebuild their lives, either together or apart, and just to help people get the best out of their life.
Yeah, that's a lovely aspiration, isn't it?
Yeah.
What more could it's almost a divine aspiration to help people get the best out of their lives, and that's hugely important. So the people who will go forward for these regional social work awards, they will be equipped as you have described. They're people who want to make a difference. They're people with a sense of vocation, more than people who are just sort of clocking in at 9 and going home at 6.
Yeah, I think these are people that have gone that extra mile, that have dedicated a lot of their time to either developing a project that has made a difference to a lot of people, or somebody who has taken a particular individual on a journey and allowed them to see some light at the end of that journey and to help them come through it, which is why members of the public and service users can actually nominate people through these awards.
How do they do that?
There has been some advertising through some of the local media, and I think they can just approach the local office of wherever their social worker is working, ask to speak to their team leader, and somebody will take them through that process. It's not a very difficult process, and we would certainly encourage members of the public where they feel that they value the service and that it's made a difference to them, that they might want to nominate that social worker.
If I were to ask you about an observation on the general social welfare, health of our nation, of our province, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are we fixed? Are we a balanced society? Are we a fragmenting society? Are we a people who are maybe on the verge of, because of the pressures you've talked about already, on the verge of mental illness even?
Yeah. I think in many ways in Northern Ireland we've become a much more multicultural society, which I think is a good thing.
As do I, indeed.
Because I think it brings different values, different experiences to bear. I do feel that society is under a lot of pressure in terms of the economic situation, and we see it daily on the news and in the papers. But I do feel that over the years, and it will continue, that social work across the programmes of care plays a very important and positive role in helping people to deal with some of those challenges.
And that's what your people are good at doing.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you partner organisations when you spot problems which are perhaps going above and beyond your ability to work with, that you can source the Samaritans, or you can source some kind of institute like credit union or debt management, CAB, whatever? Do you advise people, guide people towards solutions, if you like?
Yeah, because social work doesn't have all the solutions. And I think, as you said earlier in the interview, they need to work closely and collaboratively with other organisations, like the St Vincent de Paul, like the Samaritans, like the Citizens Advice Bureaus. We work very closely with all of them. And we work a lot with a lot of the voluntary organisations such as the NSPCC, work closely with Bernardo's, work closely with the Northern Ireland Association for Mental Health. So there's a wide range. And we have to work with them because getting back to the point you made earlier, there's less money about in terms of providing healthcare. So it is important that those organisations work smarter and work better together to use that resource to the best of our ability.
Well, you're the Director of Children's Services. Are our children, in broad terms, safe within our community? Are we family orientated still? Are we loving of children still? Are we protective of children as much as we should be? Are there kind of hidden issues beginning to encroach?
I think some of the issues have always been there. I think we've maybe got better at identifying them and maybe encouraging the public to come forward if they have concerns about children's welfare. I feel there are a lot of challenges, not only for social work but for other professionals in terms of working with children and with families. But overall, I do feel the state of the health of our children in Northern Ireland is pretty good. I still think we've got that fibre of a sort of society still there. I don't think it's, from what I see, I think there are greater issues in England.
Yes.
But I think because of Northern Ireland and maybe its size,
maybe it's our tradition of
and our tradition,
family,
yeah,
whatever.
I think there are always challenges, but I think we're in a reasonably healthy situation.
Paul Morgan, the Director of Children's Services. I'm very proud of what you do.
Thank you very
Go
much.
well. God bless you.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.